My name is Nick Dashwood Brown. I look after the IR side at Anexo, and this presentation is based on our final results to the end of December 2021, which were released, I think, on the 11th of May, so about 5 weeks ago. For those of you who are not familiar with Anexo, what is it that we do? Well, we are a one-stop shop for the non-fault motorist who is involved in an accident that is not his fault. We are an integrated credit hire and legal services group, and we specialize in what we call the impecunious motorist. In other words, people who haven't got any money. And that enables us to hire out replacement vehicles at commercial credit rates rather than the spot rate which you might get if you went to Budget or Avis or whatever and hired a hire car yourself. We use our in-house litigators to recover hire and repair charges from the at-fault motorists insurers. And we have a direct capture business model, which I'll explain shortly. With operating margins, you can see on the right-hand side, they're 23.5% for FY 2021. At the top, turnover 118 million, PBT 24 million, and we do pay a dividend. The final dividend was a penny to make a penny and a half on the year. So just to explain what it is that we do, we divide ourselves into two main divisions. Edge, which is the vehicle division, which is provides the first solution for non-fault motorists, and we provide cars and light commercial vehicles, motorcycles, and also bicycles. The majority of our business nowadays is motorcycles. Why do people come to us? If you're an impecunious motorist, in other words, you haven't got any money and you are involved in an accident that's not your fault, you tend not to go to your insurance company for three main reasons. Number one, you don't have no claims bonus protection. Number two, you haven't ticked the box for a replacement vehicle. But most importantly, in order to keep your premium as low as possible, you normally will choose as high an excess as possible. So if you're driving around in a car that's worth £1,000 at best, it has an accident that's going to cost £1,200 to fix, and your excess is £1,500 to keep your premium low, there's no point in you calling your insurance company. So what these people tend to do is they go to their garage, what my executive chairman calls Fred in a shed. I'm sure you've got one, I've got one certainly, and it's usually two guys with an inspection pit in a garage somewhere, and tries to get it fixed as quickly and as cheaply as possible, because broadly speaking, our customers need to work, need to be able to travel, otherwise they can't work and they can't get paid. Now, if they're lucky and it's one of our introducer garages, we don't own these, but we have relationships with them, and we've got 1,150 or so across England and Wales. If it's one of ours, then they will put them in touch with us and we will provide them with a replacement vehicle, either until such time as the vehicle is repaired and returned to them, at which point the hire comes back, or if the vehicle is a write-off, at such time as the insurance company pays up for the value of the written off car, and obviously that can be a considerably longer period. We've also recently signed an agreement with MCE Insurance, the largest motorcycle insurance broker in the UK. So we are looking after all their non-fault accident business, and that's the first time we've had a non-direct referral business. I'll come to that later. So that's the vehicle side of things. On the legal services side of things, our legal services division is called Bond Turner. It's a wholly owned firm of solicitors. And the reason for this is that ultimately, when we have hired out the car's been repaired or valued as a write-off or whatever it may be, we write to the at-fault motorist insurance company and say to them, you owe us X amount of money. And invariably, they ignore us. Now, we've got two options here. We could either carry on sending increasingly desperate letters until we don't get a response at all, or we very straightforwardly issue a writ against them. So we take them to court to recover our charges. And we have a 98% settlement rate pre-court. On the rare occasions when we do go to court, we win 98% of the cases that come there. And broadly speaking, what we tend to find is that defendant solicitors will be keen to settle before it goes to court, because by and large, we try and make sure that we take on cases where we have a very high chance of success, either because there is an admission of fault or because the evidence is overwhelming. So we look after the recovery of hire charges and repair costs from the at-fault insurer. We also have specialist reports where necessary. We do personal injury work. I was interested listening to what Richard was saying earlier at Frankel Topping about catastrophic injury. Obviously, if you're involved in a motorcycle accident in particular, then your injuries are potentially going to be quite serious, so we will look after that. We've never been particularly interested in the kind of whiplash claim which the High Street solicitor used to pursue prior to the introduction of the Civil Liabilities Act in May of last year, and that's largely put the whiplash solicitors out of business. So we're looking more once again at catastrophic injury. We also have a new division which specializes in housing disrepair, and I'll go into detail about that in a little bit, because that's potentially a very, very successful and large business for us. So Bond Turner doesn't just act for Edge, but all claims generated by Edge are handled by Bond Turner. We also have a pure advocacy division, which includes class actions, and that includes the highly publicized one against VW, which you may have seen in the newspapers, and I'll come to that in a wee bit as well. So looking at our financial highlights for FY 2021, you'll see there's a gratifying number of pluses on the right-hand side. But these were good results. If anybody can be said to have had a good pandemic, then to be honest, our pandemic wasn't too bad. Given that the fact that our customers tend to be on the impecunious side, a lot of them we were working in what were classed as essential industries. They were working in the NHS, they were working in retail, they were working specifically as delivery drivers, and obviously the demand for delivery drivers, both in terms of motorcycles but also in terms of commercial vehicle deliveries, absolutely exploded during lockdown, and this has had a positive effect on numbers. So you can see across the board there, we've got decent increases in the numbers. As we grow, as we put more vehicles on the road, then obviously we absorb cash, and you can see that the cash flow was negative. But we have two levers we can push with this. If we want to absorb cash and grow the business, we put more vehicles on the road. If we feel that we need to lay off on that, we'll bring the number of vehicles on the road down and increase our cash collections so that we can become cash positive very quickly. And the trend at the moment, having had very strong vehicle numbers last year, is just to manage those vehicle numbers more closely and look at increasing our cash collections. So looking at our KPIs, these are the things that really drive us in terms of how we run the business. So utilization was pretty good last year. Vehicles on hire at the year end, you'll see a considerable rise during the year of up 46%, and average vehicles on hire for the year up 21%. I'll show you a graph on that in a minute. Completed vehicle hires, that's vehicles that have been given back either because the written off car has been paid for or the repair for the repairable car has been completed, up 31%. We've settled 18% more cases, and we've funded 10,000 odd cases, that's up 36%. Now, cash collections up 21%. We've done that because basically we are hiring more staff, and you'll see that our legal staff and our senior fee earners, who are the ones who negotiate the settlements with the defendant solicitors, have shown very strong growth during that period. It's a straightforward equation. More people working in the office equals more settlements, equals more cash coming in. It's worth bearing in mind, looking at the new cases funded, by the way, that we turn away about 50% of the work that we get offered, either because we think it's going to be an expensive use of working capital, it absorbs a lot of working capital, or because there may be a reason why we think that the case will be contested, and it may be that the absolute fault liability is not easily proven. So here's a graph for credit hire. And you'll see this is a good illustration of what happened during lockdown. So you can see during the first lockdown at the beginning of 20, seems like a lifetime ago, the number of vehicles dropped, and it dropped fairly considerably within the first week, but then it recovered extremely strongly going into the end of the year. When the second lockdown came along, we saw a similar pattern with vehicle numbers coming down. But once again, a very strong recovery. And as I say, at the end of the year, we had an extremely high level. We were really running very hot. We are remaining firmly focused on motorcycles. There's better value metrics than a motorbike. Ultimately, if a motorbike is damaged, it's much more likely to be a write-off than a car. If you've got a relatively small moped, and the majority of our motorcycles are 125cc and below, the kind of twist and go that you see delivering pizzas and the like. If one of those gets knocked over, gets some bent handlebars and a dented tank, then, largely speaking, that is going to be a write-off, and therefore our vehicle is on the road for longer while we wait for the insurance company to settle with a check. So looking at claims funded and cash collections, new cases, as I said before, were up 36%, and we settled an increasing number of cases, which is reflected in the extra number of lawyers we have. And so cash collections very, very strong once again. We saw record cash collections in the fourth quarter of 2020 for the year, and record cash collections in Q3 and Q4 of 21. So once again, that's moving in the right direction. Now, I just wanted to talk a bit about housing disrepair. This is a new division which we've been putting together for the best part of a year and open for business at the tail end of last year. The statistic off the top of my head is that 4 million people in the UK rent from either a council or a housing association, and about 4.4 million rent privately. And a lot of these homes are not fit for human habitation. There is an act called the Homes Fitness for Human Habitation Act, which came into force to make sure that these houses are in a fit state. And this is either damp and mold growth, or it is something where things are not up to scratch. Either you've got holes in the windows, or there's a draft coming through, or they're badly put together, or actually the fixtures and fittings are not fit for purpose. And you may have seen some of this on television. There's been some absolutely shocking examples of social housing which is not up to scratch. A lot of our customers are on low incomes, and therefore, it is not surprising necessarily that they possibly live in substandard housing. It's not necessarily the fault of the authorities. A lot of them don't really know the state of their housing stock. I think they are making efforts to improve that. But this is an interesting business for us. We've expanded the team rapidly during 2021. At the year end, we had about 1,500 ongoing cases. We settled about 500, and these settled much more quickly than a credit hire case. A credit hire case typically can take up to 460 odd days to settle, and the majority of that delay is because of the length of time it takes to get a court date. If I applied for a court date today, I would probably get one in about 16 or 17 months' time. That's a function of the fact that the courts are overloaded and there aren't as many courts as there used to be. In terms of housing disrepair, normally if you send in a solicitor's letter with the surveyor's report, then they don't want to take it to court because it is an open and shut case, and they will pay the compensation and get the work done. The returns to the business are excellent, and we're really looking forward to this being a very significant part of our business going forward. I spoke earlier about advocacy for class actions, and I'm sure you're aware of the VW emissions case. The High Court ruled that VW subverted key air pollution tests, and they've settled in various other jurisdictions: US, Germany, Australia, Brazil, Canada, off the top of my head. Now, they did announce a couple of weeks ago a settlement with a range of other UK legal firms, the largest being Slater and Gordon. And from memory, I think that was 193 million. Sorry, I can't. Actually, I should know that. I do beg your pardon. It was a significant settlement, and the average was about £2,100 per client. Now, that wasn't our class action. We have a separate one against VW, and Bond Turner is continuing negotiations to settle claims on behalf of around 13,000 confirmed clients. So that has the potential to be a significant windfall to the firm. Any settlement will result in us receiving a proportion of any damages awarded and legal costs. I can't give any indication as to when this might settle, and I can't really give any indication as to how things are going. But we would hope there is a court date set for January 2023, and one would expect that we would be able to reach a settlement prior to that. Now, VW were not the only manufacturers involved in this. There were claims also against Mercedes. We have other manufacturers as well, and we have begun to source claims against Mercedes. We secured a bit of litigation funding, and we are negotiating a significant bundle of litigation funding, which means that prudently we do not have to risk our own balance sheet in taking these cases on, because this funding is on a non-recourse basis. So that has the potential to be a major windfall, as I say, and it's not in anybody's forecasts at the moment. So current trading, we've got a strong balance sheet. We did gear up last year, but that gearing remains conservative, and we certainly have sufficient headroom within our current funding facilities. We are continuing to recruit. We're recruiting good lawyers throughout Bond Turner. We opened an office in Leeds at the beginning of last year, and that's beginning to reach a larger size. We already have offices in Liverpool and in Bolton, and we're recruiting in Edge. We have 4 or 5 depots across England and Wales for our vehicles. We're continuing to get new cases from MCE Insurance. This only started at the tail end of last year, but we believe it's going to be an extremely useful conduit for high quality and high return cases. And in terms of vehicle numbers, we are looking at vehicle numbers in terms of quality claims, high service standards, high success rates. That ultimately means that the figure of cars on the road of 2,366 odd at the tail end of last year is on the high side. And you'll see those vehicle numbers coming down as we focus more on settling cases, thereby increasing cash collections. And that's moving more towards a cash generative procedure. Having said that, vehicle numbers continue to exceed those of last year. The housing disrepair team, as I said, is continuing to expand, and also we are looking to start emissions claims. We've already kicked off some of our marketing, and that will be expanding going forward. And our timing is interesting. We have a trading update coming out at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, so do set your alarms. I can't really give you much more information as to what that will be, but I will say that it will give you vehicle numbers, it will give you cash collection numbers, and it will give you housing disrepair numbers, and all of those are moving in the right direction. That's more or less it for me. We have the figures for income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow. I don't propose to go through those in detail. Those are my details at the bottom of the presentation, and I'm always happy to take any questions if anybody thinks of anything after this presentation. But as things stand, I think probably it's easiest if I open up for questions.
Thanks, Nick. Good to see you this evening, and thanks very much for your presentation. Okay, let's go straight into the questions. You were saying you've got a 98% win ratio. Is that an independent figure, and is that an unusual success rate?
Okay, there's two things. There's two 98% figures. Number one, we settle 98% of claims before they go to court. And secondly, when they do go to court, we win 98% of the cases that go to court. Those are not official figures; those are our internal figures. But those are what we believe. In terms of the cases that we lose when we go to court, very occasionally there's a he said, she said, and the judge doesn't believe our guy. More often than not, it's because by the time the case gets to court, our client has either moved or we've lost contact with him, or we have a lot of overseas couriers who do courier work, and if he's gone back to Brazil, if we haven't got a client, we haven't got a case. So normally, if we lose a case, that is because our client is uncontactable.
Okay, thank you. With the UK government plans for autopilot cars, which we hear so much about, how may that affect your business?
I don't think autopilot cars are going to really affect our business at any time soon. I would like to think that even autopilot cars, it's amazing, unless everybody is an autopilot, somebody's going to be driving something that's going to collide with an autopilot car. I sort of take the view that the last traditional car in the UK is going to be driven by one of our customers, because it just is. To be honest, we're not particularly worried about that. It's interesting, electric vehicles are going to be interesting because they're silent. That may or may not make a difference as to whether or not people can hear them coming, but I would suggest it's not going to detract from the number of accidents that are going to happen. And specifically in the motorbike, in the courier market, couriers get paid the quicker they get to a job, because then the quicker they get to a job, the quicker they can get to the next job. And I'm sure anybody who's come across a courier riding in London, it's really not a question of are you going to get knocked off, it's a question of when are you going to get knocked off and how much will it hurt when you do.
Okay. So are you worried about the wait time at the courts increasing?
Actually, the wait time of the courts is coming down. It was up to about 550 days. It's now down to about 460. That's partly a function of the courts reopening. We did, obviously, when all the courts were closed, there was a lot of stuff being done by Zoom. With the best will in the world, some judges, I think, struggle with that technology, and it was difficult to do. And obviously, if you've got cases that require witnesses, you've got to have them in court. So that backlog is being cleared, and we're finding also that people are being more realistic about settling. We do have a few protocols with insurance companies, not very many, but a few, where we are agreed that they will pay us a certain percentage within a certain period, and that also helps to reduce the number of days where our cash is outstanding waiting to be collected. So if anything, those number of days is going to decline.
Okay. Which are the sources of revenue in the housing disrepair business? Just legal fees, or also a share of the compensation the tenant could receive from the landlord?
Sure, it's both. So in the same way that VW, we take a share of the compensation. The tenant is given compensation, and we take a part of that. And then we get legal fees on top of that. And in terms of the outgoings, which absorb working capital, it's not really very much. The main thing is a surveyor's report, which costs around £800 to £1,000. And once the surveyor's report is written, then really that's, it's very difficult to argue with that. So it's a highly lucrative business for us.
Okay. In terms of competition, do you have any unique services on offer for your claimants?
Yes, we put them back on the road, and most people don't. We really do. If you are impecunious, if it's not for us, then unless you have a personal injury, there used to be a number of high street solicitors who would run a small fleet of cars, but they would give you the car. They're more interested in the personal injury work. Now those are all disappearing because the whiplash reforms have got rid of them. And it's we don't make a huge fuss about ESG. We probably should make more of a fuss about it. It is a fact that without us, people will not get to work and they will be taking their kids to school on the bus because nobody else does what we do, and certainly not at the scale we do it.
Okay. Analysts reduce their earnings per share estimates, suggesting business headwinds could lay ahead. Have you got any comments to make about that?
I wasn't aware that analysts had reduced their earnings forecasts. Last time I looked, they've been increasing them. But from memory, we're on a single-digit PE. So we at the moment we believe, and have a look at the trading statement tomorrow, but we believe that the future is bright and there is a lot of potential for the business. The only constraint is in terms of capital availability, but as things stand at the moment, if we continue to generate cash at the rate we're doing, then that puts us in a very positive position.
Okay. How do you promote the company? Is it B2B or B2C? How does the consumer know about you?
The consumer knows about us through our network of garages. We don't advertise B2B and we don't advertise B2C in the sense that we don't want people ringing us up out of the blue and saying, look, I've had an accident, can you help? We have a B2B business in the sense that we have salespeople who go around the independent garages and point out that it works very well for them because they get paid in full and on time by us, which they certainly don't from an insurance company point of view. So that's the relationship there. And then they pass the introduction on to their customers. And obviously from their perspective as well, the customer is satisfied, they'll get repeat business, and they will also get business by recommendation.
Okay. Obviously you're servicing the UK market very successfully. Will you target other markets?
Well, there's two points. I mean, you say the UK market, it's England and Wales at the moment. We don't do anything in Scotland. And the reason for that is that in order to do so, we would need a Scottish solicitor's badge. And it's something we have looked at before, the possibility of buying a Scottish solicitor, and then we can start doing work up there. We already get some referrals from MCE in Scotland. Elsewhere, internationally, I mean, there are potential things. The most obvious market is actually Australia, where the law is almost exactly the same as the UK. And as yet, we've yet to send anybody out to Australia to do it. I keep sticking my hand up, but without success so far.
Right. The housing disrepair product you touched upon on your slides you've introduced, do you need this new area of business? Could it take away your main business focus?
It doesn't take away our main business focus at all. As I say, it's not very working capital intensive. The team within Bond Turner is separate to the team that deals with the credit hire business. So it's almost a standalone business itself. We've hired these people. There actually aren't that many people who have expertise in housing disrepair. We've hired some pretty good ones, and they're training up a whole team of people to do it separately. So it is an adjunct, an add-on to our business, which doesn't detract from the core business, but it has the potential to be a very major contributor to our P&L.
Excellent. Well, I think that's it there, Nick, in terms of time. Appreciate your presentation this evening. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your time. Anybody's got any questions, my details are on the website. Thank you very much. Good night.
And we'll send the slide decks on to all the delegates. Thanks, Nick.
Very good. Thank you.